The second step in affair-proofing our marriages is I need to maintain my marriage. 1 Corinthians 7, 2 through 5 says this: because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations, unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourself more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan doesn't tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Sometimes as I read Scripture, I can't believe I'm reading Scripture. This is one of those passages. But if it was important enough for God to put it in the Bible, these just blatant language he uses, this direct nature of this text, then it is so important for us to take to heart. And I think what God is making abundantly clear in this passage is that the temptation for adultery increases when our attention to each other's sexual needs decreases. Let me say that again. The temptation for adultery is going to increase when our attention to each other's sexual needs decreases. God designed husband and wife to take care of each other sexually. Just how he designed it. And notice what he says about self-control. He says that our self-control is also going to decrease when our sex life decreases. That's why he says if you're going to take time away from sex to fast and focus on prayer, make sure you come back together and get naked. That's basically what the scripture's saying, right? Come back together and have sex, because otherwise Satan is going to go after us if we are coasting through life in this area. We need to be intentional in marriage. That was the one thing my wife said when I asked her about this message. It's like, hey, babe, what would you say so far? You know, we've only been married a few years, but what would you say so far is it would be your piece of advice for affair-proofing our marriage? And she just said, we need to focus on each other's needs. We need to be intentional. Because nothing in life gets better without maintenance, right? We can't expect to hit cruise control and coast through our marriage and see it thrive. It doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way, right? Our houses don't get better without maintenance. Our cars don't get better without maintenance. Our bodies and our health definitely doesn't get better without maintenance. And our relationships, especially our marriages, don't get better without maintenance. And in this passage, God is zeroing in on the topic of sex. Because if we don't take care of each other sexually in marriage, Satan is prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And he's going to go after the couple that's on cruise control and no longer pursuing each other. He's going to go after that couple that isn't being intentional. So, take care of each other in marriage. Go on dates. Have fun. Pursue each other every day. And I think it's important, too, to note we need to be honest about what we like and what we don't like. I know it's crazy. We're kind of having this talk in church, but it is what it is. God focuses in on the area of sex in this passage. We need to be honest because we can't have intimacy without honesty. So be honest and intentional. And also remember this, too. You are your spouse's only godly output for sex. That's it. You are their only godly output. Anywhere else they turn is sinful. Any other sexual experience on the internet or with someone not your spouse is outside of God's design and will lead to our destruction. So this is a very practical way that we can guard against the temptation of adultery. We need to be intentional. We need to take care of each other. And this isn't true for only sex. That was one thing my wife made very clear to me when I asked her this question. This isn't true for only sex. Gary Chapman, he wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. And the main idea of the book is that we need to practice loving our spouse in the way that they feel loved. Because our natural tendency is to love people in the way that we feel loved. That's just natural. So if we're on cruise control, if we're coasting through our marriage, we're just going to love them the way that we feel loved, but they may not feel any love by that because their love language may be different. And so in this book, he talks about physical touch, 5 major love languages: physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gift giving. In any relationship, but especially in marriage, we need to learn our spouse's love language and then practice loving them in that way. That's what it means to be intentional. Coasting means that we're just going to love them the way we feel loved. But being intentional means we're going to love them the way that they feel loved. For example, in my own marriage, my top love language is physical touch. But my wife's is quality time. And so I get myself into trouble when I try to give her heavy doses of physical touch, but not enough quality time through conversation and heart-to-heart connection. I need to love my wife in the way that she feels loved. That's how I can be intentional. It does take intention. We need to satisfy each other's needs in marriage. So that's the second step to affair-proofing our marriages.